Good morning and welcome to the Demolition News Monthly Business Briefing. I'm your host, Mark Anthony. And if you're watching live, thank you for joining us at this ungodly hour in the morning. As regular viewers will know, each month we take a look back at the new construction contract awards that have been reported by market intelligence provider, the Builders Conference. We all know in this industry that when construction sneezes, demolition catches a cold. So this monthly show is a key indicator of the cold, hard statistical facts, and just as importantly, I think, a signifier of wider market sentiment, both of which might impact upon the demolition industry in the weeks and months ahead. As ever, I will be joined today by Builders Conference CEO Neil Edwards, who is standing by in our green room. But to those of you that don't know, I just wanted to give you a bit of a recap. Neil and I have traditionally met face to face to look over these monthly facts and figures for the past 10 years or more. This live show started back in March when lockdown restrictions meant that we could only speak remotely. And here we are 6 months later, and we're no closer to getting back together in the same room at all. If anything, our face-to-face meetings have been effectively pushed back indefinitely while the UK faces a second wave of the pandemic. Now, we know from very recent history that the UK construction sector effectively soldiered on through the first wave of COVID-19. So with the second wave now taking hold, I think it's a good time to have a look at just what the business is going to be doing. So while I bring Neil onto the show to hopefully get an answer to all those questions and a few more, let's just roll the intro. Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
So, yeah, I'm very well. Well, all things considered, the fact that I never really came out of lockdown, but it looks like I'm going to be staying exactly where I am for the foreseeable future. And I've just alluded to that. I guess the first question and the most important question that everyone will want answered is, has the second wave of coronavirus hit workloads yet?
It doesn't seem to this month. It's maintained the levels that we've seen through the rest of the year so far. So we're keeping fingers crossed that it doesn't actually affect us.
That's good news. I mean, as I just said, the UK construction industry, by and large, because they were named as key workers early on, it basically the whole industry effectively just carried on working almost regardless of the lockdown the first time around. And I guess while I think personally people are finding it hard to comprehend the idea of going back into lockdown, I think the construction sector and therefore the demolition industry has been there. It's got the t-shirt. It kind of knows what the score is now, doesn't it?
Yeah, very much has soldiered on and really has held part of the UK economy together, really, because obviously it's not just people going to work in the construction sector, it's also the subsequent of what they're doing, buying things when they're on site or outside in the local shops, whether it be cafes, restaurants or whatever. So yeah, no, they have started to support the actual industry as a whole. Oh, sorry, the sector as a whole.
That's good news. Good news. So I mean, let's have a look at the figures. I have to admit, I have taken a sneak peek, and the figures are looking remarkably good. I mean, remarkably good at any time, but remarkably good, particularly in the face of a second wave of pandemic.
Absolutely, yeah. We were hoping, what was it, a couple of months ago, by saying if we could finish the year with 4 million or £4 billion a month to the end of the year, we'd all be very satisfied. But this month in September, we've actually gone past that. We're at the present moment in time about 5.7 billion. So yeah, we've exceeded my expectations really, especially as we're coming into this second wave.
So who came out top of the tree this month?
Well, it's a housing association which has a construction arm to it as well. They have reported a £1 billion redevelopment of the Purfleet town and town centre. Now, this is going to include something like nearly 3,000 homes, plus television studios, plus they're going to be altering and adapting the existing station. It's a huge project, absolutely huge project. At the present moment in time, they've only named themselves as Swan New Homes Limited and New Housing, or new to build it, or New Living, should I say. But I'm sure that as time progresses, some of the other bits and pieces that are going to be in this new redevelopment are going to be put out to bid to main contractors who are more specialised in that sort of area. Second on the list is Waits, and they've had a very good month. So even if you take that £1 billion off, we're still at, which is obviously a signature project, we're still at sort of like over 4.5 billion, which is a great month, really. But Waits the second, and the largest of their projects that they've picked up is approximately a £600 million project in Wealdstone, Harrow. Excuse me. It's for the London Borough of Harrow, and that's also divided into kind of a number of elements. There's 400 dwellings. There's a new civic centre, which has got nearly 10,000 square metres of open planned office. There's community space. And that actual area, a lot of it's going to be the headquarters of Harrow Council. So that's a great job. And they've picked up, at the present moment in time, 3 projects this month, but that's the largest one of them all. Third is Lang O'Rourke. Now, this one's for up in Manchester. So thankfully, it's sort of like pushing some of the works across the UK. And this is the Great Northern Warehouse in Deansgate. It's a redevelopment of the Great Northern Warehouse to provide a minimum of 142 apartments, including office and retail units. That project's worth about £300 million.
Just before you go on, it's interesting to note that the first 3 projects you've mentioned there all have a very large focus on housing once again, don't they?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we really see that is the key area at the present moment in time, whether it be social housing, mixed-use developments, or actually spec housing. That's really where the market is quite buoyant at the moment. And we see in the press also that a lot of there is a shortage once again of houses outside London as a conurbation, shall we say. So the likes of Purfleet, within easy distance of London, it's the same as Harrow there as well. But also you got this one obviously in Manchester, and I know there's been some documentaries on the television just recently regarding it as well. But yeah, so yeah, housing does really dominate the market at the present moment in time. The fourth one is also housing as well, and it's for a company called Court Collaboration. Now they're somebody new to us, and we don't know whether they're going to be building it themselves or project managing it or whatever at this present moment in time. But it is a new project, and that's actually in Birmingham, and that's for a £280 million project, 995 residential units in 7 cluster buildings. So that's a pretty decent project as well in the Midlands. Fifth on the table is what we've seen on the television as well, is regarding this, what Kent is going to be, or Tunbridge Wells possibly could be, for when Brexit actually happens. And this project,
it's going to be a massive car park, isn't it?
it sounds like it, but there's also a big business park going to be built with that as well. And this is a company called U&I PLC, so they could be project managing it as well. But it's mainly a new business district planned on land on the outskirts of Tunbridge Wells. So that could be where, obviously, if you're going to have this great big car park dealing with a lot of the border issues, etc., you're going to need staff there. So this could be something that's actually supporting that development. And that's a £200 million development in Kent. And 6 on the list, and I'm becoming like a broken record here, is more housing. But this one is under the brand name of St William Homes, which is obviously owned by the Barclay Group. And this is for a new development in Poplar Riverside. As I say, it's 577 new Riverside studio 1 and 2 bedroom apartments in East 14. To also note, Morgan Sindall this month at the present moment in time are leading the way with the most number of projects, and that's 16, with the largest one of theirs being a £32 million new school in Southampton. It's a demolition of the existing buildings and then a 3-part and 2-part story new school. So I finally changed the actual record there. And I'd also like to talk about one other larger job, which is actually secured by Mace. It's a £140 million project, and this one's an office, and this one's at Farringdon Road. The client is Helical Bar, which means hopefully there is still confidence to build offices, even in this time when there is much remote working out there. So yeah, that's a fairly decent project as well.
I will ask you a proper question in a second, but we've had a couple of comments in.
Yep.
Just a very quick one. Good morning, Shane. Thanks for joining us this morning. Nigel Williams has put fingers crossed for 4 billion. Well, you got more than that, Nigel. I'm glad to see you here. Andy Bullock on housing. We have never been busier. Well, that just about sums up everything you just said there, Neil. I think the fact that the housing sector is going great guns. And on that point, you and I have spoken a lot over the past few months, or over the past few years, actually, about this imbalance within the construction sector. We saw a growing imbalance between private and public sector finance and that kind of thing, but this reliance upon housing is probably even more troubling than that, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, it is. How we get to deal with that at this present moment in time, I don't know, because we do have quite a lot of words from the government of the day to say about they're going to be investing. And I think we spoke about this last month about infrastructure. That's fine, but we've got to start doing it now. And a lot of the things that were on the drawing board have got to be taken further forward. Saying we're going to invest and it's on the drawing board is one thing, but another thing is actually we're going to invest and actually doing it is another. And we have got to see actions if we're going to succeed, especially if we're moving a lot of the housing outside. We've got to provide the infrastructure for them. So if there's a new £1 billion project going on in Purfleet, does the local infrastructure support that? And that's by way of hospitals, etc., schools, and obviously rail and road. So yeah, there is an imbalance, and in a way, long may maintain itself because it's actually supporting the construction industry. But you wouldn't want to, if you looked at it from an economic situation, with the amount of money coming from there, it won't take long before that runs out, and we're all in a little bit of a problem.
No, absolutely. I mean, it strikes me, and I can be a cynical old sod, and that's kind of what I get paid for. But it strikes me, HS2 in some ways is a cover story. HS2 is now underway, and we're getting regular sound bites on what a great thing that's going to be. But you scratch the surface below HS2, and there doesn't seem to be a huge amount else going on there, does there?
No, HS2 is such a bigger element, and we're kind of distracted by other parts of the news saying it's growing in its numbers, That shouldn't distract us at all. What we should be doing, if there is a distraction, it should be to say, well, where are these things? Where are the hard facts that we are starting a new project? And actually, where can we see it? HS2, we can stand on a number of hills up the actual the country itself and see a lot of earth moving and infrastructure works going on. But where we want to be able to stand on those same sort of hills or same and see those hospitals, schools, and other elements as well of infrastructure.
Yeah, we've. It's almost not worth mentioning housing again. We know that will be far and away the biggest part of the makeup of the past month. But what is the breakdown? How much of it was housing, and what comes second and third?
Well, yes. Housing is over 2.1 billion of that 5.7 billion, but also we have 1.7 billion of miscellaneous. And I go back to that. If the project such as in Purfleet, because it's got such different elements to it, we don't know the physical breakdown of it. We'll put that into that area. So you're talking over £3 billion, most probably, of that 5 billion or 5.7 billion being of housing stock of some sort of another. which
So,
is
effectively over half of everything reported this month, he's got some sort of housing element to it.
absolutely, which is extremely, going back to our previous comments, extremely concerning. But I don't want to be concerned because it's obviously supporting the construction industry. Obviously, with that large project I spoke about with Helical, who are going to be the client for it, which Mace have secured. Offices this month is over 650 million. Then we have education at 300, just over 300 million. And finally, warehouses, which is over 200 million. I can see warehouses and distribution plants or centres or whatever definitely increasing, because we are going to an online click economy. Very rarely have I been to the shops in the last 2 or 3 months. It has all been online, whether it be by that huge great business or others. But yes, I think warehousing could be a growing sector in the next 6-12 months, if it's not already.
In some ways, that's also indicative of the fact that we are increasingly an import economy, aren't we? We're taking stuff from overseas. It goes into a warehouse before it's shipped out to Joe Public. So, yeah, I mean, I can certainly see that. Funnily enough, I was on a site yesterday where there's 3 huge new warehouses being built down in Dagenham in Essex, and absolutely monstrous. Like several football stadiums worth each. They are absolutely huge facilities, and that's it. Does seem to be the way we go. That and mixed use developments. Mixed use developments do seem to be a real flavour of the month. That idea of mixing social and housing and retail and all the other stuff that goes with it.
Yeah, I can see those are going to be the big sectors. Hopefully, education maintains itself. But going through those figures I've just said, health is down at 130 million in the month, which is, we want to see these. I think Boris said 40 new hospitals. Well, come on, let's see these 40 new hospitals or refurbishment of these hospitals. Don't just talk about them, just get them on the way.
Yeah, that one is a real highlight, isn't it? Or possibly a low light. The fact that we are potentially facing a second wave, and there's already been headlines about a possible third wave of a pandemic. And we are still just talking about hospitals. We've already proven as an industry that we could turn around these Nightingale hospitals in the blink of an eye, pretty much. It doesn't take a huge amount. It just needs somebody with the will and the decision-making ability to say, go, and the industry will put those hospitals in place.
We have the skills. We've shown that already, as you say. The XL building, which has been turned into a Nightingale hospital, was turned around in no time at all. So we are not being used, and it could be the likes of warehouses. Well, I doubt that, but even if it's office blocks or something like that, temporary measures could be used if we need it. But that's really only just sticking a plaster over the problem. Really, we want new, ultra-modern, efficient hospitals that aren't all corridors and areas where obviously viruses can get hold of and then move through the hospital and with devastation. We want brand new hospitals.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And not just hospitals. When you think about the way that schools are designed and hospitals are designed and office blocks are designed, I think having seen partly this need to stay distant, but also the fact that a lot of things can be done remotely, remote learning and I mean even sort of diagnosis of illnesses and that kind of thing being done remotely. It really could change the way that all of these buildings are designed. So giving Boris and his team the benefit of the doubt, maybe somebody's just poring over the drawings to make them more suitable for the future.
I hope that's the case. I really do, because it would be pointless. And we've spoken about this many times before, where motorways are designed for today, when really, which was, they should be designed for tomorrow, or if not in the future. A 2-lane motorway or a 3-lane motorway is just not efficient. It's got to be 4 and 5, and you're spending more money doing these smart motorways and extending them than if you would do it was all at once. So yeah, probably that's not a bad thing.
So geographically, there did seem to be the usual southern bias. I take it that is still the case, is it?
Yes, very much so. a southern bias is there. We've got over 1.6 billion in London, and because of that huge job in Purfleet, Essex, that's over £1 billion this month. Obviously, with the project I spoke about up in Manchester that Lang O'Rourke secured, there's over £600 million worth of work there. And in the Midlands, you've got over £500 million worth of work. So, and Kent, with that business part, there's over £300 million worth of work there. So, yeah, we're talking a southern bias, but there are other significant locations that have got quite good results this month. Scotland, and I do mention that on a number of occasions, it does seem to be dragging its heels coming out of this lockdown, and probably, as you see, it's gone back into a second lockdown. So at the moment, we're just over £100 million up there. So yes, it does seem to be dragging its heels up there.
Yeah, it does seem to be. It's just lagging that little bit behind. I think that was because of the way that they approached the lockdown. South of the border, we just, as we said previously, we just soldiered on, whereas Scotland, I think, took a more, considered view and actually stopped quite a bit of work. And you can't just press a button and restart work. So, hopefully by the time October rolls around, they will actually have maybe caught up with the rest of the country.
Yes, I hope so too. Yeah. But looking back, we always talk about the £100 million mark, don't we, as well, for how many contractors. This month's a little bit less, and it's only 12. And if you take that huge rate project at the top off, that's down to 11. So 10 is our benchmark, but we like to beat that quite significantly. Last month we did. So is there worrying signs? I speak to numerous people during the month, and there is definitely a concern of, if you are bidding for projects, and if you're bidding for non-residential projects or non-housing projects, your number of inquiries through the door is definitely diminishing. And if you are linked with the likes of a housing sector and you have your own housing arm, I think you're going to be okay for the short term. But if you are linked with doing offices, health, education, and just general refurbishments of, whether it be ecclesiastical or whatever, I think the number of inquiries passing across people's desks is diminishing at rather an alarming rate.
In some ways, and it's not really any different to what we had the previous time around. But we do have the perfect storm brewing, don't we? We've got a second wave of the pandemic. Brexit seems to be drawing ever closer, as evidenced by that project down in Kent. So I can certainly understand people wanting to sit on their hands and not invest the money in new projects at the moment. So once again, it will be down to construction to just rally the country, I would guess.
Yeah, and most of the money is going to have to come probably from central government on a lot of things. And we know already that there is some indication that obviously all our taxes will have to go up to pay for what has been happening so far. And if we're going to ramp that up even further, then obviously more taxes are going to have to be paid. We are going to be in this. So it's a delicate balance, such a delicate balance, because obviously the Chancellor's got to maintain business and support business, whilst also supporting people that haven't got a business and who are currently unemployed because of this pandemic. The only thing I would say is the UK is not unique, is it? It's happening across the world, and it's how we can manage that the best. And as I've said to many people, there is no manual to this pandemic. We've never been here before. We don't know what the shape of the curve looks like. We don't know whether it's a wiggly worm. We don't know whether it's a V, a U, or whatever. And we've just got to do the best we possibly can at every point and be on it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess taking that point, I think the construction industry as a sector does actually have the manual now. We went through the pain of having to have different sets of guidance almost daily at one point, sort of March and April and that kind of thing. But all of that is in place now. So I had serious I had serious question marks about the good sense of construction remaining open for business throughout the first lockdown. It seemed unfair. We employ 1 million, 2 million people. The biggest independent employer in the country, and we were effectively expecting people to go to work amidst a pandemic that we didn't fully understand. But construction has developed and evolved and put those systems in place. So, of all the sectors, I would say, we are probably better equipped and more knowledgeable now than perhaps just about anybody else. So to carry on that workload throughout a possible second wave, I think we are in a pretty good position this time.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely 100% correct there. We've done it. There are very few changes that we've got to make now if we have lockdown, a further lockdown, because we've had them in place already, and there's been no ambiguity through the actual process. We have social distancing on our sites, how we keep it. All we must do is not slip back and maintain it, because obviously at the beginning we were very strict in what we were doing. Probably we've been a little, over time, it's just natural that you go back into your old ways. But what we've got to do is maintain the fact that we keep ourselves apart, especially with the numbers that are growing with cases of the COVID.
No, absolutely. I mentioned the fact that I was on site yesterday, and I thinking back about it, it's surprising just how quickly we've come to accept the new normal. I arrived on site. I was expected to wash my hands with hand sanitizer, which I did. Expected to wear a mask, which I was already wearing. I met half a dozen different people. We all stood a sensible distance apart. Nobody shook hands or anything like that. And it wasn't a case of I'm now thinking about it. That's just the way the world is now. It was literally second nature. And hopefully, as we say, if we are slipping into a second and possibly third wave, the industry has learned those lessons and has got those systems in place now.
I think we're very good at looking at rules in an industry, and we try to maintain it, because we know if we break any rules, it can be fatal at some point, with health and safety. So as an industry, we very closely look at rules, and that's to our benefit and that's to our credit.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, I say this every month, I think, and I don't think there's ever a time when we don't need good quality information. But, as we are potentially looking at, as I've described it, the perfect storm of Brexit and a second wave, we do need to keep our finger on the pulse. So where can viewers and listeners and anybody else find out more about BC Live and what is actually going on in the market?
Well, Builders Conference has a team of researchers. And so if you go to www.buildersconference.co.uk, on that website, you'll see a link for a demo, and that will take you into where the actual in-depth analysis, in-depth data and sales leads is held. That isn't a free, unfortunately, option. You do have to become a member of the Builders Conference, and once you do, you actually see it's a one-stop shop. You can see everything on there, and then you can apply for projects or put yourself down to that you'll be interested in pricing particular projects. But what we decided to do I think it's now 13 years ago, we decided to put the aggregated form of information together of who's winning what job, and that is on a free site, and that's on bclive.co.uk, and that's a lively table. It doesn't just include today or whatever, it includes the month, but you can also look at past months, and you can look at areas now. And if I just I've just got it open now. So in September so far now, we're up to, let's refresh the page.
I think by Neil refreshing the page, he may have just switched off his webcam. I'm not entirely sure what happened there. No, it's okay. He's just come back.
Yeah, my internet is very, very poor here, unfortunately. And so
it can only handle one function at a time.
Yeah, which is really. Yesterday, I went downstairs and I was trying to look at something on the television. It says you've got no internet, and it's just anyway. But yeah, looking at the table now, yes, it shows that in London we've got 70 businesses that have won it, and you can look in September, August, July. So just go to bclive.co.uk. That's the live information. The in-depth information, which we've spoken about here today, and where the actual project is, and plus who's dealing with it, etc., etc. If you ask for a demo, we'll show you how you can get that, and hopefully become a member.
Yeah, I mean, I will highlight that as well. Obviously, I'm speaking here on behalf of Demolition News, and with a very sort of demolition bias to what we're discussing here. But those projects that have just been awarded, because we do live in an island nation where quite often if something new is going to be built, something old is going to be taken out of the way. So there's an awful lot of real in-depth information about who's building stuff and who is going to need demolition assistance, just locked away behind one very, very small firewall that, in the grand scheme of things, costs virtually nothing to access, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We're an organisation that is owned by its members. So one of the big things it's very difficult to do is increase our prices because as soon as you do that, it's obviously hits the pocket of the members themselves. So it's a very worthwhile service. And what also unique to us is that you, if you're a demolition contractor, can tell us that you've actually secured a works, and you can send through photographs like you do on LinkedIn and things like that. But you can put it on our website or on our platform to say, yeah, okay, I've secured this project, and I'm demolishing a gas holder or whatever. Here's a video for it, and we can upload that video, a link to the video and the pictures as well. So it can also work as a brand awareness, if that's everybody uses, or a sales and marketing tool on our website as well.
That's fantastic, Neil. As always, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know when we meet face to face, we normally talk about football, and I'm quite happy to do that off air on the basis that West Ham have finally won a game. But for the time being, I'm going to call it a day for the live show, and you and I can talk about football and anything else that takes our fancy off air. Everybody else, thanks ever so much for watching today. Hope you found that useful. Keep an eye on bclive.co.uk, as Neil said. Really put your finger on the pulse. It's all well and good trying to get a feel for an industry, but if you can back that with cold hard facts, I think you're better informed and a better place to make some real business decisions. So thanks for joining us. Sorry it was an early one, but that's the nature of the beast at the moment. Shane, thank you for joining us. As I said previously, good to see you here. In the meantime, stay safe, look after yourselves, your family, your friends and your colleagues, and I'll see you again very, very soon. All the best.